You probably clicked into this video because you've had a moment where a thought or an idea was so clear in your mind, but when it came time to explaining that idea or concept, your mind just went blank. The harsh reality is that people do not judge you based on the depth of what you know, but people judge you based on how you communicate those ideas. If your words come out incoherently, it does not matter how great that idea is. If you cannot clearly express yourself, then it is really hard for people to ultimately see the value in you. Hi, my name is Jasmine, and on this channel, we talk all about becoming the woman of your dreams and building a life that you absolutely love. And in this video, I'm going to be giving you real actionable tips to build your articulation. And do not disqualify yourself if you do not identify as a philosopher or a writer, because it does not matter. The skill set is accessible to anyone and everyone who is willing to learn, as long as you apply the tips that I'm going to share in this video. Here are all the video chapters, and you can find the video chapters in the description below. And if you are someone who is ready to do the real work, I'm not just talking about watching these videos, but actually transforming. I provide worksheets for every single one of my videos. In these worksheets, you'll find in-depth journaling prompts, as well as practical exercises to help you start removing your limiting beliefs and to write out an action plan so you can start living out as your highest self today. You can access these worksheets down in the description below. Now let's dive right into the video. The very first chapter is creating brain space for original thought. How you can access the most articulate version of yourself is by resting in flow state. Flow state is when you are fully in the present moment, your mind and body is clear, your thoughts and ideas are not necessarily being generated by overanalyzing or overthinking, but it's simply a flow of ideas and a flow of words that are just flowing through you. Now, we all have access to this very eloquent part of us, but the real question you should be asking yourself is, am I allowing my mind to be quiet enough to hear those flow of ideas and thoughts? And it's a very powerful place to be, especially if you're speaking, if you're making a YouTube video, if you're going through an interview. Remember that you are simply a vessel expressing the very ideas that the universe is flowing through you. If you don't believe that you have an articulate side, I want you to think back on a time where you were particularly passionate about a story or an idea and you were sharing it with your friends and family. Were you constantly overthinking about how you were being perceived? Or were you sharing that story because you were led by your passion? And you didn't need a script because you were speaking from the heart. And that is only possible if you start emptying the mind and start staying in the present moment. There is a certain level of trust that you need to start building within yourself. Start letting your confidence lead the conversation rather than letting your overthinking and overanalyzing lead the conversation. And another big reason why your mind is clogged up with all of these different ideas and you can't seem to stay in the present moment in order to articulate yourself better is because of this, your cell phone device, and specifically your relationship with your cell phone. Because the overconsumption of social media, TikTok, Instagram is simply rotting your brain. If you are scrolling on TikTok and Instagram and watching short form content for 8 hours a day, how can you expect yourself to have the capacity and energy to stay in your flow state? Because that excessive stimulation is causing you to be very scattered energetically, which means that you can't focus on one thing for too long. That's why when you feel that you're stumbling on your words and you can't quite articulate something, is because your mind and focus is not entirely on the topic at hand. Stimulation is the opposite of emptying your mind, and instead it's adding more chaos, more noise, and more sound, which makes it even more difficult to articulate yourself. But if you dare to be original, as well as coming up with ideas and thoughts where people actually ponder and say, oh my gosh, I have never thought of it that way, those ideas only exist within flow state. So in order to achieve a more permanent state of flow, I recommend these two action items. The first is to train your mind to start resting in the present moment through meditation. Just by meditating 10 minutes a day for 365 days, if you're able to do this consistently, you will see massive and dramatic changes in the way that you're able to articulate yourself, simply because you are emptying the mind and you're creating space to be a vessel of ideas, vessel of words, vessel of wisdom. The longer you're able to focus your awareness on the present moment, the more likely you'll be able to receive those revolutionary ideas and thoughts, as well as eloquent word combinations. The second thing is to stop being a slave to your phone and start regularly living in boredom. When your mind isn't constantly being stimulated by brain rot content, your mind will start rewiring itself to be able to focus for a much longer period of time. And this grants you the space to start thinking in a much deeper yet simpler way. Boredom is also where interest and curiosity starts. If you have been losing that childlike wonder, that childlike excitement, and you find that life is just very dull right now, you need to re-access that by being bored more often. Boredom will help you gain back control of your brain again. So I recommend that you have a routine where you stay off of your phone for a little while. So I recommend 2 to 4 consecutive hours of no screen time the moment that you wake up. So don't grab your phone first thing in the morning, but instead allow yourself to spend time without your phone for the first 2 to 4 hours of your day. The second thing is, if you have the luxury to do so, I recommend spending 1 to 3 days not using your cell phone. And while you may be complaining, Jazz, this is way too long, I can't not have my phone for 2 to 4 hours, or I can't not use my phone for 1 day. If you think that is long, talk about the 30 minutes of boredom that you spent in the last 2 years. The second thing is mindful consumption. Your ability to curate what gets your attention determines how articulate you will become. If you are unconsciously spoon-feeding your mind with rage-baiting content, mind-numbing content, or just general time wasters, guess what's gonna come out on the other end? The same shit. It's just gonna be mumbo jumbo coming out of your mouth and your inability to express anything deeper than that. My sister and I are both Chinese-born Canadians. While we've had the same upbringing, our Chinese ability is vastly different, and I'm talking night and day. My sister routinely watches Chinese TV shows, and her favorite pastime is watching Chinese reality TV. And as for me, I cycle through The Office and Suits. That's all I watch. Now guess who is more fluent in Chinese? Probably my sister, because my sister is at this university Chinese level, and her ability and articulation in Chinese is only growing from here, whereas for me, I peaked at this grade 5 level and it's slowly declining. Articulation is like any other skill on the planet. It's like playing handball, playing softball, learning how to salsa, learning a language. Articulation is the same exact way, where it's a skill set that can be strengthened through repetition. And in fact, philosophers were also regular old babies once, where they cried for a bottle of milk. No one is born with this natural ability to speak articulately, and especially any sort of best-known speaker that you know, they built this identity through the Michelangelo process. The Michelangelo process is simply a process to create yourself. Like a piece of stone shaped and built into a beautiful sculpture, and you can build your identity intentionally and consciously by being hyper-aware of what kind of content you consume. This needs to be done through properly hand-selecting the types of content that you know will help you grow closer to the version that you want to become, because you are what you consume. So here is what you need to do. First, you need to curate your social media pages. So follow 2 to 4 creators or accounts that post content that is slow and that requires you to think. Don't consume anything other than these 2 to 4 accounts, because anything more than that is only going to create more noise. And unfollow creators who make fast content. And this is the type of content that does not get you thinking, but it only distracts you from making any change to your life and benefits anyone but you. The second thing is to read more books from authors that you genuinely admire. If you love their writing style or you love their ability to articulate their thoughts, I highly recommend watching their podcast or reading their books, listening to their audiobooks, and really absorb their ability to articulate those complex ideas. The third one is to consume television intentionally, because there is also brain rot TV. So make sure that the types of content that you're watching is truly a reflection of how you want to speak more of. And I get it. I love The Office, and I know that when I'm particularly having a bad day, I love returning back to the office, but make sure that you don't overdo that brain rot content. The next chapter is deep and slow reading to provoke deeper thought. Read a piece of literature out loud. And if you don't understand something, go back to it, reread it, dissect it, and once you fully understand that sentence, go back and start all over again. You want to do this for an hour a day, every single day, if you want to improve your articulation. And it's important that you're reading out loud, not for the sake of just reading it out loud, but you're doing this to fully comprehend that text, as well as hearing yourself be articulate. Read books and articles slower than a sloth. Doing this on a daily basis is going to help you dramatically improve your articulation, as well as building a more powerful mind. When you're using this method, reading a book is going to take an abnormal amount of time. In this day and age, everyone is in this race to read as many books as possible, but in order to improve your articulation, the race that you need to focus on is not how many books you read, but how much information you retain from one single book. Both speed reading and slow reading has its benefits, but you first need to understand what your intention is. Speed reading is great and fantastic if you want to just get an overall gist of an article, if you just want to gain that surface level knowledge. However, on the other hand, slow reading is all about improving your articulation, as well as having a deeper comprehension and deeper engagement with the ideas and thoughts that you're reading. Because slow reading forces you to sit with those ideas and use those ideas to connect to your own personal life experiences, and then those specific ideas are going to branch into new original thought. You'll also be very surprised to see your ability to recall certain words or how accurately you're able to express yourself, simply because you are more exposed to these people expressing these complex ideas, helps you access that same level of understanding and depth with your own ideas. The next chapter is to build your own body of work. So how do you find your own personal body of work? The first thing is to find something that you're incredibly passionate about and something that you are obsessed with. And I know that a lot of you watching this video may not necessarily know what you're passionate about. You don't know what you care about. So follow your curiosity. Be led by your curiosity and act on your curiosity until you find the very thing that lights you up. Then use that subject to pull 8 to 10 of your biggest ideas that connect to any sort of topic. So when it comes time to speak on a certain topic, you'll already have a starting point. The greatest speakers on earth know that they're not meant to be articulate in all topics, but instead they focus on articulating on their own expertise and their own body of work. So for example, let's talk about Jordan Peterson. Despite your opinion about him, he is someone that is incredibly articulate. But you'll notice that if you put together all of his podcasts, all of his talks, all of his courses, all of his books, all of the things that he talks about comes back to the main 8 to 10 big ideas. And sometimes he cycles through those same 8 to 10 ideas and talks about them the same way. He is a master of articulation because he is a master of articulating his own body of work. Imagine what would happen if you forced Jordan Peterson to go up on stage to talk about the Earth's crust for an hour and a half, or to talk about marine biology for an hour and a half. He's not gonna know what to say or have a clue on what to say, because that's not his field of expertise. Find your best 8 to 10 ideas and master the art of articulating your own unique perspectives. The best speakers and writers, they spend years and years mastering, crafting, refining those ideas, learning how to articulate them better and better so they resonate on a deeper level. And those ideas do not necessarily have to be revolutionary or vastly different, because think about the topic of external validation. On YouTube, you've seen probably thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people already making a video on this topic. It is a very common topic on YouTube, and including yours truly, I've also made a video about external validation. But every single video does come from a person from a very different perspective, a very different background. Articulation is the ability to sell your point of view to someone else who has never seen life that way. Now, this is where I want to talk about the importance of intersecting your your most passionate subjects into one. Don't shy away from having multiple passions or multiple interests, because you can actually use this to your advantage to be incredibly original. Because at the end of the day, you cannot be articulate around something that you're not fascinated by. The great thing about you, no one will ever think the same exact way as you. No one will have the same exact past as you. No one will have the same combination of interests as you. No one will ever have the same exact perspective as you. Therefore, no one on this planet is a carbon copy of you. You are an original piece of art, a category of one, and you can utilize your multiple passions and interests to inject brand new perspectives into the world. For example, if you have a passion for philosophy and psychology, you can blend these two fields together to create a brand new perspective. If you're passionate about science and spirituality, you can use this as an opportunity to blend these two seemingly contrasting fields together to create a brand new perspective. Keep this in mind when you're coming up with these 8 to 10 ideas, because this is going to make you irreplaceable. And if you've been waiting to feel ready posting online, making talking head videos, or simply doing public speaking, but you feel a lot of resistance around that, I've made a 1.5 hour long workshop. It combines NLP, EFT tapping, journaling, and also deep subconscious rewiring to help you remove any of the blocks and subconscious beliefs that you have around speaking publicly, being visible, and showing up online. So if you want to build your confidence with speaking, check out my workshop in the description below. The next chapter, we're going to be talking about the 3 H's of articulation framework. Whether you are speaking to one person or 100 people, your main objective is to leave a lasting impact. I know that it's particularly difficult if you have a big, complex idea you need to share, but you only have a limited amount of time to do so. And if you have a big idea, it doesn't take hours to explain it, but in fact, this is an important time to learn how to edit, trim, to make sure that it fits into this 3H articulation framework. This framework is going to help you organize your thoughts in a much clearer way. The first H is head. What do you want the person to know and understand when they're listening to your message? What is the main idea? What is the whole point of your video or your speech or your TikTok reel or your interview answer? You must be able to summarize everything that you're sharing into one simple sentence, and if you can't do that, that point is not getting across to the other person. The second thing is heart. How do you want that person to feel after listening to you? Do you want them to feel uplifted, joyous, happy, inspired, urgent, fearful? When you are creating impact, it's also important to take into account the feeling aspect, because the feeling is what actually gets people to remember your speech. Because people don't necessarily remember the nitty-gritty of what you've just said, but people remember the way that you've made them feel. The third H is hands. What do you want them to do after you've conveyed this message? It doesn't necessarily have to be a physical action, but it can be as simple as changing their point of view. If you want to get someone to do something, you can't just rely on logic, because people do not act on logic. People act on emotion. Before you make a talking head video on TikTok or YouTube, or right before that interview, make sure you return back to the 3 H's to make sure that you're articulating yourself in a clear and concise way. The last chapter is articulation is the art of becoming yourself. A lot of people misinterpret articulation as simply spitting through a string of words that just sound smart. But articulation has absolutely no impact if people don't know what you're talking about. If you've made a real impact in your message, meaning that you got someone thinking about your idea for days, or if you were able to sway someone to a decision, then you were articulate in that time and place. Articulation is about finding yourself and finding your unique speaking style. Think about the greatest speakers of all time: Dr. Joe Dispenza, Neville Goddard, Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, David Goggins. All of these people have a very different speaking style from one another, but they're powerful, articulate, and impactful because they lean into their authenticity. And that self-criticism, fighting yourself every time you make one small mistake, or comparing yourself to different speakers is not only going to sabotage your articulation, but it's only going to make you sound more awkward. So if you want to master your articulation, stop punishing yourself and start accepting yourself. Because imagine if you were dating someone that was so particular and was so critical of your every single move. Don't walk that way. Why are you dressed that way? Why are you wearing that outfit? Why are you breathing that way? Why are you eating that way? Oh my gosh, close your legs. That if this person was to follow you everywhere and criticize your every single move, what's gonna happen to you? You are gonna be incredibly self-conscious. You are less likely to express yourself fully because it doesn't feel safe to do so. And if your inner critic is constantly hammering at how unworthy you are, hammering about how weird you are, how imperfect you are, why do you sound this way, why are you talking this way, why'd you say it like that, that is only going to add more friction to your eloquence. Your articulation can only be found by mastering the art of being yourself. If you are trying to be someone you're not, people are going to be able to find that out because people are a lot smarter than you think. So if you want to silence your inner critic, the prescription is to start accepting yourself fully. Now we've reached the end of this video, and if you want to implement everything that I've taught in this video, then check out my free worksheets down below. And if you are on the journey of becoming the woman of your dreams and building a life that you love, check out my channel because I make a ton of videos about self-worth, relationships, love, communication, career, literally all things high-value woman energy. If you love this video, I highly recommend that you check out this video over here. This video is all about how to develop a powerful voice so you increase your perceived value. I love and appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!